Let me ask you the big question. Why is Indian television media in such a horrible mess?
It really is in quite a mess now. I mean, we had big hopes when it started out because you'd think India is perfect for television. It's visual. India is so dramatic. And even with the illiteracy which is still there, it's more accessible perhaps than for the habit of reading newspapers or something. It should be wonderful. It should be a great way to reach people. But I think what has happened, I'm talking particularly about English language television, is that it has become so, I can't think of any other word but biased. It has become so pro establishment that people in the channel, reporters in the channel, anchors in the channel management, do not want to antagonize the government for many reasons. It could be financial. If the government is unhappy with them, they don't get financial ads. It could be fear of legal action because journalists and reporters and establishments which have spoken out against the government have been had pressure put on them from the IT department, the ED department. So there could be fear as well. And it could also be the desire to be close to power. There's a thrill for a journalist when they have access to somebody very, very senior, somebody very powerful. And if they have that access by only saying nice things, the temptation then is to just be nice and to just be positive and say everything is fine so that you can get that interview or you can get that access or that powerful person will come to the channel's shows, the platforms which the channel has. The person will speak to you. So for these reasons, a lot of compromise began coming into the TV, especially TV channels.
Now, one of the problems that you highlight in the newsroom is this whole culture of a star anchor. Whenever he or she walks, there's like an entourage. And then you also write, because you've been in Bengaluru all your life, you've covered Bangalore. There were frustrating times when the star anchor would descend onto Bengaluru. They used to parachute to Bengaluru when it came to big news coverages. And you've also been at the receiving end of some starry tantrums that these star anchors have thrown in one way or the other. But the audience sees the product and they like it, the big lights, the studio and the live location and all of that. But as a bureau reporter or as a senior journalist, when you see a star anchor flying in from Delhi with, like I said, an entourage, a camera person, somebody, with an assistant, what goes on behind the scenes when such a situation happens? And I'm asking from your perspective when you were in Bengaluru covering the city and the state.
Yeah. I did have one advantage in that since I'd been there almost from the start, I was a little bit senior to some other bureau reporters. So I could get my point of view across sometimes, but not all the time. And it was very frustrating, as you mentioned, for a bureau anchor who was following a story, following an important story, to then find somebody parachuted in who then took the prime time slots, who then got the interviews with the big players, the big newsmakers, because they could put the story on prime time, they could put the interview on prime time. It was frustrating. We did try to express it, but because of the whole star anchor system, it was sometimes different for even senior editors in Delhi to make that change, because it was a very strong personality cult, and so that person had to get the interview. Let us say I was interviewing the chief minister, and it was a good interview. It may not play in prime time because the star anchor had got the same chief minister. It may not have been anything different. The interview may have been pretty much the same thing. Mine may even have been better because I was local. But the procedure was that the primetime anchor had a primetime show and the interview went in primetime. They got the big budgets for their shows, whereas we would manage to pull it off. There was our team, our camera teams and our editors were very resourceful. So somehow we would pull it off, but we were economizing and watching the budget all the time. So it felt a little unfair when you saw that the star anchors could get lax together for their productions, and which obviously made the show look different, made it look better. So there were those frustrations. It was a little easier for me, like I said, because I did have a bit of seniority, but it was very hard on the whole, for a bureau reporter to have somebody come in and take over on their own turf.
Right. In fact, just to stay on this star anchor point, when one looks at TV news, and since the time I have started watching TV news, my vivid memories of it. There's a certain gentleman who's known for raising decibels on news channels and tearing apart television screens night after night. Now, when the times were different in our republic, the same gentleman used to raise issues that mattered to the people. He used to shout, he used to yell, and he used to get his point across. And in a way, people latched it. The point I'm trying to latch onto it. The point I'm trying to make is the justification that many give is that, look, this sells. When I'm angry on the screen with 10 talking heads, this sells. People like it and they want more of it. Then, do you agree with this justification? That is something I'm sure the nation would want to know from you.
The nation would certainly want to know. Well, I think what happened was it's a mix of things, because an easy argument for channels is this is what the people want. Let's give it to them. And initially, it is very possible that the anger that was being expressed on what was earlier a very mild medium, we're talking like Doordarshan, of course, nobody raised their voices. And even in the early private channels like NDTV under Prannoy Roy, it was very mild. There was a conversation going on. We didn't raise our voices. We were told not to get into an argument. We were told not to look for an argument between opposing politicians. That was the style then. So when this new thing started, when the gentleman or whoever else among his colleagues began shouting, began demanding answers, began demanding questions, I'm sure that in some way the viewer felt, yes, he is asking things, he is saying things I would love to say. He is talking to that person, he is insisting on getting an answer. Yes, he's speaking on our behalf. Because initially, if there was something important that the nation did need to know, then it was very important that somebody ask those questions. So initially, it may well have been, finally somebody's speaking up to power. Somebody's finally asking the questions I want to ask. But then it becomes too exaggerated. It could even become a bit of a caricature. Many anchors now feel that shouting is the way to go. Many anchors feel that if a debate where everybody's shouting and is insulting each other, that's a good debate because you're getting some life. And also, if you're shouting and asking questions, it should be of everybody. It should be both sides. It could not be biased, that you're only looking and questioning one side of the political divide, but the other side is, everything's fine. It can't be that way. So I'm not in favor of the angry style of journalism. I think you get more answers, actually, if you ask a polite question, if you stay calm yourself. But it does have its takers, this angry, emotional style. But if you have to do that, then do it for both sides. Be balanced is the wish. A wish which may not come true, but that is the wish.
Absolutely. Now, we of course live in interesting times. We live in polarized times. And the whole question that comes up quite frequently now is, should a journalist be neutral or objective? That is the question. It's become a debate where there are two sides of the coin. There are people who say that, no, it's the safe thing to do, both sides journalism. But then there's the other who say that, you have to show both sides of the story. Do you think in today's times, is there anything such as an objective or a neutral journalist?
It's a very tough and very interesting question, which journalists need to ask themselves almost every day. Because when I started off back in the 80s and 90s, you had to balance your report. You had to show both sides. You had to be neutral. That was the ideal then. Then, as we witnessed, things became very biased, which was not good. But there are questions also about what is bias, and do you show both sides? When one side is perhaps spouting hate, bigotry, inciting communal passion, do you then say, but we have to show that side also? Or do you... It's very, very hard. Do you then reduce the exposure of those voices because you know that they are hateful? That's a judgment call that you are taking then. That I will not have that person on the screen saying such ridiculous things about another community. But do you then have to show it because you're showing perhaps a reaction or a public protest or perhaps some legal action? Do you then show what that person said to understand what the story is about? It's a very, very difficult issue. And in fact, even in the book, I asked Danya Rajendran of News Minute. She said reporters should not be neutral. They have to be on the side of the people who need the help. it like you should be. It's a cliche, but the voice of the voiceless, the people who need answers, students whose exams are leaked, people who go to a government hospital and who don't get the treatment that they need, or people who are facing terrible infrastructure in cities. You need to be on their side. It's not like, yes, the government says this, the public says this. It's like you need to then perhaps be on one side. Maybe it's story by story, but it's not as simple as it used to be, where, yes, be balanced. I'll take what Maya says, I'll take what Shubham says, and then the story is done. It's like it's more complicated these days. It is very complicated, and there is no easy answer. I think it has to be story by story, and you have to follow your conscience, because we do take sides. Whether we show it or not, we do take sides in a story. We do think that person is corrupt, that person has done the wrong thing, or that person is really great. And you have to kind of keep that objectivity while keeping a balance. It's hard. It's very hard.
Right. I think one of the reasons why people must read this book is because it is, of course, Maya Ma'am's story, her journey, TV News' journey, but it also includes quotes from people and perspectives of people who've been in the field, who are in, some may be in journalism, some may be not, but you get a holistic and a comprehensive perspective so that, you are free to make up your own mind on where you think journalism, TV journalism stands today. So I think that is one thing that stood out for me in the book. Now, we spoke about bias. The channel that you worked for the longest time, it is, of course, anti-establishment. It asked the tough questions politely. But then in the later years, you were also labeled as anti-BJP or anti the Prime Minister. And before I come to what we saw at Jantar Mantar, I want to know from you. You, of course, mentioned some of the incidents where you as a reporter had to face the brunt on ground because people thought, your channel was anti-BJP.
Yes.
How did you navigate through such complicated or a difficult circumstance to be?
It was very complicated. It was very difficult because, yes, I worked in NDTV for a long time, but I will say that I was never asked or expected to show one political side, to diminish another political side. I was never expected to do that. I could report as I saw the story. But yes, definitely, NDTV was seen as a pro-Congress, anti-BJP. It was perceived that way. And that perception trickled down into the party kind of it. When you went to a place, when I went to a BJP political meeting, very often there would be people in the crowd saying, oh, go away, or you're anti-national channel and things like that. And I'd gone actually to cover when the CAA protests happened. I covered the protests against CAA. I also covered, again, both sides. I covered protests that were in favor of CAA. And when I went to the pro-CAA protest, that is the ones which were in favor of what Prime Minister Modi was planning, what the BJP government was planning, they saw me there. And I had taken the precaution of taking off that big NDTV mic, and I just had the mic in my hand. I was asking questions, and then somebody recognized me and said, they're from NDTV. That's a Pakistani channel. Send them away from here. Go away from here. Which is very disturbing when you're on the field. Another time also, I was doing a report on COVID containment zones. Nothing terribly political about that. But somebody who turned out later on to be a very junior BJP political worker, he saw the mic and he said, you're from NDTV, you're telling lies, go away. And we were on a public road, and he kept on yelling throughout the time I was trying to record my piece to camera, which is disturbing. It's really disturbing. So yes, that was there. How did I try to navigate it? Well, I tried to be as balanced as possible. And I think the fact that here in Karnataka, which was ruled several times by the BJP, everybody from Chief Minister Yediyurappa and the other BJP chief ministers, the spokesperson, would continue to speak to me. In fact, elsewhere in the country, we didn't have BJP officials coming to the studio or talking to an NDTV mic. In Karnataka, they did. So very often, like even for national debates, they'd ask me to organize a Karnataka politician to be part of that. So I did try my best to be balanced. And people from all the parties have told me that they never felt I was on any one side, which I think it was difficult, but I think it was an achievement given the perception of NDTV at that time. So I just tried to be neutral as far as possible on screen.
Right. In that context, now let's juxtapose what we saw in Jantar Mantar. Godi Media reporters bullied, they were hounded, many of them were assaulted, beaten up, shirts torn, And it was a very distressing sight, to say the least. But again, there is a difference of opinion on whether these reporters deserve this treatment or not. One side would say that, look, they're doing their job, they're doing something that their boss has asked them to do, and the other is saying, no, this is part of the channel that is spreading hate, so they must be, bullied and harassed like this. Where do you stand on this debate, and what the scenes that you saw in Jantar Mantar?
Well, to start with, I'm absolutely against violence, abuse. I don't like it. I think if you can get your point across using politeness and words rather than fists and tear gas and batons and things like that, I think that is much preferable. I do feel that the reporters on the ground were definitely bearing the brunt of editorial decisions taken by somebody sitting safely in a studio, sitting safely in a boardroom. The reporters who are out there on the field saying, they're reporting for a channel who's described the student protesters as mobs. So obviously those mobs would not take kindly to a representative from that channel. I think the reporters had to take an unfair amount of pressure because of that. They were literally the face of their channel, and they had a very hard time. And it was nice to see actually some of the young people afterwards apologizing and saying, we know you were doing your job. We didn't, don't feel badly about that. It is also true that they know which channel they're working for, but not everybody has the luxury to pick and choose. Some people may need that job, may need a salary, may want to be a journalist on air. It's a tough, as a young person yourself, you know that it's not necessarily an easy environment out there when it comes to journalism jobs. So there may be people who have joined a channel hoping to gain some experience, hoping to learn on the job. They want a job. It's like not everybody has the luxury, the financial luxury, the emotional luxury to say, I don't agree with you, I'm quitting. There are many people, I do believe, that even in these channels which have maybe not shown themselves in the best light, I do believe there are still people working in those channels who do have a conscience, who do want to be balanced, who may not agree with the editorial line of their channel, but who are still working there because maybe they're trying to make a difference from within. Maybe they're trying to earn a living. So I feel that the reporters had a rough time of it. People may say it's what they need to expect because they're part of that channel, but I still think that sometimes reporters bore the brunt more than they needed.